According to Yale University's program on climate communication, 64% of people polled in Canada think the climate emergency will start to harm people during this decade. Howard Breen has no doubt that the crisis is already damaging Canadians and taking a huge emotional toll on many of us. Full disclosure, for the past year and a half, Howard, Regina Klein, and I have all been members of Extinction Rebellion Victoria.
Change requires not just mass participation at times, it's going to require mass civil disobedience.
Howard's been an environmental and human rights activist for almost half a century, organizing against the Vietnam War while still in high school, then, in the 1980s, taking to the front lines to protest Canada's role in producing critical components for U.S. weapons.
I found myself fighting the cruise missile manufacturer of the guidance system for it in Downsview, in Toronto, and found myself arrested 7 times. We shut down Department of National Defense numerous times over numerous issues. There were so many issues.
Howard was even thrown out of Israel for protesting the country's occupation of Palestinian territories. But he's paying a high price for his many decades of activism.
Well, in 2017, I was diagnosed with climate and biosphere related depression and anxiety, and I was treated for that by my family physician.
Till then, Howard, in his own words, had lived full throttle, not just on land. He's a veteran scuba diver.
I have had the honor and privilege of being able to go places that a great many other human beings will never ever see, but have also been hit with the gut punch of seeing many of the species that I first saw and inventoried with marine biologists are no longer there. The largest, BC has some of the just incredible, not just terrestrial, iconic species, but we also have the Salish Sea. Jacques Cousteau called it the Emerald Sea. In my lifetime, since I left high school to now, we have seen a species decline of 70%. That, to me, is just, you know, it's a little more than just missing the bugs on the windshield when you go for a drive in the country, right? It's the sound in the air has changed. The smell of a field has changed.
Howard has changed.
It's impacting me in a way that it has frankly surprised me a little bit, right?
How's it impacting you?
Things are amping up in a way that is shocking. If we think the pandemic is bad, and now we're even, you know, people are talking about a new pandemic because of the variants. The climate emergency and biosphere collapse is going to be so much more profoundly massive.
That's saying quite a bit, considering just how bad 2020 was. It set all kinds of horrendous records for the climate crisis. And what you're suggesting is that this intersection of the pandemic and the climate emergency are going to be fused in some ways that are much more devastating.
I think 2021 is going to pass like a sharp kidney stone, frankly. And sadly, you know, from cradle to grave, people are now waking up to fears of their own mortality.
Howard's own end-of-life plan has led his activism to his latest, perhaps most controversial effort yet. He's applying for Canada's Medical Assistance in Dying, MAID. Canada is one of a small number of nations that has legalized medical assistance to patients who want to end their lives. But right now, it applies only to those who suffer from serious physical ailments, not those enduring acute eco-anxiety or depression linked to the climate emergency. Howard wants to see that change.
Howard speaking.
In the midst of our interview, Howard was called by his physician, Dr. Casper Friesen.
Hi, Dr. Friesen. It's good to make your acquaintance over the phone here.
Hi.
A question that I have, of course, is have you ever run into a patient of yours who's made this kind of application?
Not exactly this kind, but I have a patient who also anticipates that her medical condition is not resulting in a foreseeable demise, but the suffering she endures, she considers to be becoming intolerable. I had to tell her that the legislation doesn't allow for that right now.
Now, in a situation like with Howard Breen's, that's different because of the climate crisis and the eco-anxiety and depression related to the climate emergency, is it not?
Yeah, this is the thing. That's why there's groups like, Physicians for the Environment. And, we recognize that, health depends on our planet. It's quite a weighty thing to consider what Howard is saying here. But, I start to picture that in the coming decades we could have large numbers of people deciding that they don't want to see the end of the species on this planet, that they want to exit before that happens. It's tragic that we're even talking about this when we have so much potential to celebrate life and improve life on our planet for everyone. But, greed and, human failings are resulting in this kind of thing.
There's a few things that you understand what the form's for.
Howard has no plans to end his life soon. But in filling out this form with his partner Regina Klein bearing legal witness for him, he's trying to create a precedent for himself and others to have a merciful death if the climate emergency sends humans into a dystopian death spiral. Howard says, "I don't have a terminal illness right now. I have a terminally ill planet."
Not a owner or operator of a healthcare facility.
This form has been in the making, hasn't it, for a while now?
It has, ever since I realized that we don't have herd immunity for climate and biodiversity collapse. I thought, well, maybe having something that addresses the worst case scenarios, which are world ending, this is my insurance policy for that.
So Regina, you're a partner of Howard's. You guys have been together for some time. What's your reaction to the move that he's making, seeking permission for medical assistance in dying?
Well, I support him. I do understand his concerns and reasons for doing so, and I may do it myself. He's just going through this and he's explaining it to me, so I'm pondering whether I should maybe do that as well.
So you wouldn't rule it out?
No.
I know you've been a longtime activist yourself, all on your own long before you guys met. Mm-hmm. But what is it about the climate crisis and the looming circumstances that are associated with that that would make you think that filling out a MAID application might be appropriate?
Well, I think the biggest worry for me would really be the social unrest. I'm not willing to fight anybody, right? Because once mayhem starts, because people are starving or don't have a home anymore, I would not want to be in that situation. If there is any kind of indication that violence is starting to erupt because people feel they're losing it, they're losing security, food security, housing security, then that would be really a big one for me, that I do not want to fight anybody for my chickens or, or food or water. I'm just really afraid of the social upheaval that may result out of climate emergency and climate disruption, absolutely.
That's a real fear.
That's a real fear for me, yes.
Both of you as longtime campaigners for social change, ecological change, campaigners against the climate crisis. When you started out, whether it was 10 years ago or
40.
50 years ago, 40 years ago, did it ever occur to you that you'd be sitting with an application like this in front of you?
No, never.
Howard, I want to put this question to you. Regina just answered it. What is it about the climate crisis in 2021 that has you filling out this form?
The data is ghastly, and we know that we are locked in for extreme disruptions that will tax all the resources of humanity to deal with. And yet, the world is challenging even COVID as a hoax. Why would I honestly think that we are at that juncture where we can reverse this climate overheating? As an environmentalist and social justice activist, we put out alerts all the time, urgent action alerts that an ecocidal crime is occurring here unless we do something, and there's genocide going on here, and so forth. But this is on a different scale. This is a scale that is mind-blowing.
You have children and you have grandchildren. Have you had this discussion with them?
Yes, and initially they were shocked because when they heard it, they were thinking it was imminent, this application. Once they realized it wasn't imminent, the anxiety dropped.
Howard will soon submit his MAID application. If he's successful, it will set a precedent by permitting physician-assisted death for acute anxiety and depression linked to the climate emergency. Regardless of how it turns out, he's still trying to live fully.
I just joined a mutual aid network. Community building is more important now than it ever has been. My sense that how things are going is that if we have the economic, social breakdown that comes with biosphere collapse, we are going to have to depend on each other in fundamental ways, and grief support will be one of them. But we only get there if humanity really grapples constructively with what's coming.
For Howard, it's back to the front lines. This fall, he blockaded logging trucks as part of the ongoing effort to stop the cutting of old-growth trees in the Fairy Creek watershed. And this spring, he plans to sail to Gaza as part of an effort to break the Israeli blockade of the Palestinian territory.